POV, you're a time-traveling agent and you're going to go back in time to stop a massive attack. Keep watching to see how this turns into the weirdest and maybe worst romance I've ever seen.
Today we're going to be covering Predestination, a movie that's all about loving yourself.
My name is Kyrie. This is Flights of Fantasy, a show where we look at different science fiction and fantasy movies and ask what do they mean. Predestination came out in 2014, and this is what happens. Taking some inspiration from The Prestige, this movie starts out with a black screen and a very dramatic quote. What if I could put him in front of you? The man who ruined your life.
If I could guarantee that you'd get away with it, would you kill him?
We see an action sequence where a secret agent with a violin case is going to the basement of some sort of public building, and then he gets into a gunfight. Pew-pewing, the secret agent is this close to getting the bomb into the container when it literally blows up in his face, grievously wounding him. But then, a good Samaritan whose face we don't see slides the secret agent his violin case. He's able to punch in a date and then disappears into thin air. This is Agent, and he is with a government organization whose goal is to travel through time to stop major accidents and attacks from happening. His main target is the Fizzle Bomber, and he plans on attacking New York City and having tens of thousands of casualties in 1975. We see Agent get a successful face transplant from that mission that we just saw, and then he is able to recover in time to go on his final mission, the last mission that he gets to do before he's decommissioned. He suits up in his 70s best and travels back in time. The first 7 minutes of this movie are very action-packed and exciting, and I'm sure that won't change. Right? Thinking about it, the way that they've framed their time machine and how time travel works is really smart, because this movie had a budget of $5 million. For comparison, other movies of that same year, 2014, including Guardians of the Galaxy, Ex Machina, and The Giver, had budgets of $170 million, $15 million, and $25 million, respectively. So while I will get to the issues that I have with this movie, the fact that they were able to put together a movie that is solidly entertaining and interesting is kind of incredible with such a small budget. We next see Agent as a barman working in 1975, and he's waiting on a certain someone to come in. That certain someone does come in, and while Agent Barman tries making conversation, this guy is pretty prickly, to say the least.
The look at you, I'm guessing you're not celebrating.
The look of me. What do I look like?
Just making conversation, Jesus.
So it turns out this guy's name is The Unmarried Mother, and he's a writer for a confessions column in a woman's magazine. Unmarried Mother bets Agent Barman that he's got the best story that this barman has ever heard, and he bets on a bottle of old underwear liquor. What? I'll try to summarize that now. So Unmarried Mother, I'm sorry, that's gonna be a mouthful. I'm just gonna start calling him So was born in 1945 and raised as Jane.
When I was a little girl.
What?
A little girl in an orphanage who was very smart and talented, but also picked a lot of fights.
Get off the damn street!
One day as an adult, Jane tries joining what is essentially a government space mistress program for astronauts that's led by a man named Robertson. They notice something weird with Jane's scans, but they don't tell her. She's actually doing really well in the program until she gets into a fight and is kicked out. She goes to charm school, which is basically a teach women how to be proper school. And it's there that she meets the man who ruined her life. Talks about how intense and in love they were, and how the guy just vanished. And also Jane got pregnant. A young, single, pregnant girl in the 1960s. Rough. Jane had a cesarean birth, and after this surgery, the doctor rocks her world quite substantially.
Did you ever hear about that Scottish physician? She lived as a female till she was 35. Then she had surgery and became legally and medically a man.
So the doctor tells Jane that she was born with 2 sets of reproductive organs, one male and one female. Both were immature, but the female reproductive organs developed enough to allow Jane to have a baby. However, due to excessive bleeding in the birth, they were forced to perform a hysterectomy. However, again, they were able to construct a male urinary tract. What? So the doctor basically tells Jane, good news, you have a penis now. So Jane is obviously in shock, but he is looking forward to raising his new daughter, who he names Jane, because at this point, Jane decides that they want to call themselves John to match with the transition, and they want to keep Jane in the name in the family somehow. So, Jane is now John, and baby is Jane. So whatever happened to sweet baby Jane? 2 weeks after being born, the baby is kidnapped by a man with a face.
Just a man with a face-shaped face.
Explains that he thinks it might have been the baby's dad because who else would have stolen the kid, right? And despite doing everything that he could to look for her, Jane is never seen again. Adult Jane goes through a series of operations to fully transition into being John / And this was very difficult on top of the grief of losing their kid being stolen from them.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. My name is Jane.
Explained that as a woman, he was considered a ruined woman, but he didn't know how to live as a man. He tried re-enlisting with that government company again, this time as an astronaut, and of course he's rejected. So, after a series of menial jobs where he starts over his life, he began writing, and here he is now. Ta-da! This portion of the movie took 40 minutes. After the first fast-paced and secret agent gunfight 7 minutes of this movie, the pacing, well, the image that comes to mind is a train smashing into a brick wall. The pacing slows down so much. After doing some research on the source material for this movie, and I'll tell you about that in a bit, I understand why they made this choice, but boy is it rough. I will say though, despite that, the acting is very good. None of the problems with this movie come from the acting. Ethan Hawke is of course Ethan Hawke, but it's Sarah Snook who plays Jane and John that really stands out. She's very convincing and consistent, and it's just good. It's really cool to watch the two of them collaborate on this character, and I also like the chemistry and dynamic between the two. So, story time is over. At this point, has mentioned multiple times how he wishes he could kill the son of a gun who got him pregnant, the man who ruined his life. And that's when Agent Barman asks him a question, the first question of the movie. What if I put him in front of you, the man who ruined your life? Would you kill him?
Would you kill him? In a heartbeat.
Agent Barman says that he will give the chance to be in front of the man who ruined his life and guarantee that he would get away with murder. Agent Barman says that in return, has to try his job, and he's not talking about bartending. But it's not until Agent Barman mentions Robertson that is willing to give this a chance. Agent Barman gets out his violin case and it's actually a time machine. Ooh. They jump in time to 1963, at the time and place where first met the man who ruined his life. Agent Barman explains some of the finer points of being a temporal agent. You have to keep your temporal disruption footprint to a minimum, so you have to blend in and don't stand out. You can spend as much money as you like, but you need to keep your conversations with anyone in that time period to a minimum in order to not give away that you're not from around here, not from around this time. Finally, you can jump no more than 50 years from the 0 point, which is when time travel was invented in 1981. Traveling more than 50 years is very bad. And very, very bad things happen to an agent who does that. It's also against the law, but meh. Agent Barman explains that he's starting to think that the man who ruined life might be the Fizzle Bomber. And then he sends on his way, presumably to kill the guy, because Agent Barman's got some stuff to do. Before leaving, asks if he really has a choice, or if he thinks that everything is just kind of inevitable. Agent Barman says that he agrees, and that even though this life is lonely because you can't have a family when you're jumping through time, you do have a purpose. And then Agent Barman puts on some glasses and looks super handsome. Ethan Hawke in glasses is just super cute. Sorry, I'm a glasses fan. Anyway, so this is big moment. He needs to kill this guy before Jane approaches. That way Jane never meets the guy that ruined her life. And is on the lookout. He is ready to blow this guy away. But then Jane bumps into And initially he tries to brush her off, but then she says something. The first words Jane said to the man who ruined her life. And then finishes the quote that she had started, which is very impressive.
But only the things left behind by those who hustle.
Is in awe of Jane. He calls her beautiful, which is what he wished somebody had told him when he was her. Agent Barman is watching from afar, which is unintentionally really funny. It's like he's watching two high schoolers fall in love, like a satisfied matchmaker or something. Throughout the movie, we've been watching him listen and record tapes to himself, and we're not really sure what time period they're from. But then we hear that this is his last chance to stop the Fizzle Bomber, and he won't get another chance. I got a comment in my Grinch video saying, someone, for the love of God, please get this woman a glass of water. So, this one's for you. I will be eating a bowl of salt later, though. We see Agent Barman hop through time, and he's hopped back to the mission that we initially saw in the beginning, except this time he's arrived earlier, when the bomb is actually being set up. He and the bomber get into a gunfight, and then that fist fight, and he is knocked out by the Fizzle Bomber. It's surprising to him that the Fizzle Bomber didn't kill him, because he definitely had the chance to. When Agent Barman gets up, he hears the pew-pew fight that we heard from the first scene of the movie, and he gets there just as the bomb is blowing up in his past self's face. So it was Agent Barman himself, further along in his timeline, that passed himself the time machine that saved his life. He wasn't able to stop his face explosion, and he starts wondering if maybe these attacks that the Fizzle Bomber is setting up are just inevitable. Then we check out a date that and Jane are on, and it's awkward at first. We cut between this date and the next phase of Agent Barman's final mission. Robertson actually shows up, which is rare. Robertson doesn't jump through time unless it's a special occasion. Robertson says that he knows that Agent Barman made an illegal jump, a jump more than the 50 years before or after the 0 point. And he also explains that making these illegal jumps can destroy an agent's mind, give them psychosis. But he also seems to approve of this. Agent Barman really does not want to do whatever it is he's supposed to be doing. But Robertson tells him that he has to. This is the way it has to be, and the way it's always been. He's the snake that eats its own tail forever and ever. He's the only one that exists through a predestination paradox.
You're the only one free from history, ancestry.
A predestination paradox is basically when a time traveler goes back in time to stop something from happening, and then inadvertently becomes the reason that the thing happened. It's like if you went back in time to stop your house from burning down, and then you inadvertently became the cause of the house fire. It's a form of closed loop time travel, and it basically, you can't go back in time to stop something and stop the thing from happening, and then have gone back in time because the thing never happened. It's a paradox. So Robertson leaves. Agent Barman puts on a pair of gloves, and we see what exactly it was he was tasked to do.
But you must complete your mission. You must lay the seeds for the future. We're counting on you.
He walks into the nursery of the hospital. As and Jane are getting it on, Agent Barman steals the sweet baby Jane and takes her from the time that they're in, like 1963, 1964, all the way back to 1945. And he leaves her on the steps of an orphanage. Agent Barman jumps back to pick up just the way he said he would, except has zero intentions of leaving Jane. He doesn't want to become the man who ruins his life and who hurts him like that. But Agent Barman tells him that it's the way it has to be. It's the way it's always been. But now he knows who the guy who ruined his life was and why he left. So, jumps with Agent Barman to the future and basically enlists as a time agent. And then Robertson talks to Agent Barman, tells him that this is going to save millions of lives, and then also with, like, admiration says that the Bureau wouldn't exist if it weren't for the Fizzle Bomber, and that nothing is simple. Robertson is seeing Agent Barman off because once he makes this last jump, his time machine is going to decommission, and Agent Barman has chosen New York City in 1975 as his retirement destination, just a few months before the Fizzle Bomber's big attack. But just as the time machine is supposed to decommission, there's an error? Agent Barman is doing some post-retirement investigation of the Fizzle Bomber. At the same time, is getting his first time machine and going on his first mission. Agent Barman flirts with a girl from the antique store, which is cute, and it turns out he's writing a book about his life. But then, he tracks down those leads on the timer and confronts the Fizzle Bomber. And when the Fizzle Bomber turns around, it's himself in the future. And I take back what I said about glasses. Not like this. No, not like this. Please no. He's so skeevy looking. Agent Barman was the Fizzle Bomber the whole time. The Fizzle Bomber explains that he has been preventing even more massive tragedies by happening with his bombs.
1974, Chicago chemical spill. That driver never made it to work. 324 lives saved. 1991, April 3rd, Hamburg, Germany. 1,861 lives saved.
And even though Agent Barman swears that he will never become the Fizzle Bomber, let's just start calling him FB. Even though Agent Barman swears that he will never become FB, FB then asks him if he ever reported his non-decommissioned time machine or not. And then just outright says, "You will become me, because you made me who I am and I made you who you are." It's a paradox, but it can't be changed. FB says that he just wants to be back together with Agent Barman. He wants to love him again, and that this was all just a setup by Robertson, and that in order for Agent Barman to not become FB, Agent Barman can't shoot and kill him, because if he shoots and kills him, Agent Barman will become FB. Agent Barman remembers saying something similar to
What if I put him in front of you? The man who ruined your life.
Except this time he's going to do what couldn't, and he closes his loop. Sorry, wrong movie, that was Looper. He shoots FB until he's... The final 5 minutes of the movie is spelling out exactly what's going on to the viewer, just in case you're confused. And the ending music is also very reminiscent of Saw, like the ending of Saw. We see that, except for Robertson, maybe Robertson, probably not though, except for Robertson, everybody with a goofy name that I've talked about has been the same person the entire time. So I've made a graphic for you. So we start with Sweet Baby Jane, who becomes Jane. And then Jane meets John / and they bone and have a baby. And the baby is stolen. And then Jane becomes John. And then John becomes Agent Barman after a workplace accident blows up his face. And then it's Agent Barman who steals baby Jane and takes it back in time so baby Jane can become Jane. And then it's Agent Barman again who kills the Fizzle Bomber and then inadvertently becomes the Fizzle Bomber because he wants to fall in love with himself again. Him becoming the Fizzle Bomber that creates the Temporal Bureau, which recruits John, who then becomes Agent Barman to stop the Fizzle Bomber. The end. My head hurts. Time travel always does that. Thanks. Are you? Yeah, but don't worry about it. By the way, I like our hair like this. It's really cute. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be weird. You'll come around. Now wrap up quickly. I have to start part 2 of Supernatural soon, and we should talk. Okay. Anyway, Predestination. Wasn't that an experience? The pacing felt really strange to me, so I looked it up. And it turns out Predestination is actually based on a short story by Robert A. Heinlein. And it was published in 1959. Robert A. Heinlein is a pretty well-known science fiction author, and some of his most famous works include Stranger in a Strange Land, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and...
Now the youth of tomorrow must travel across the stars to defend our world.
Yeah, that one. All You Zombies is 13 pages long. What? The problem with that is that the average film script is between 90 and 120 pages long. Oh my. So the writers for this had a lot of room to fill. Interestingly enough, though, they stayed really loyal to the source material. There were a couple of background things that were changed, like making Robertson like a prominent character. The biggest change that they ended up making was that there was no fizzle bomber in the original source material, or at least not directly. There is a mention of a fizzle war of 1963 and the bomb that had New York's number on it that never went off. So a war that didn't happen and a bomb that didn't go off. But yeah, the fizzle bomber was not a character in the original story, and it wasn't Agent Barman / John / Jane's future self, at least not directly in the story. But I don't know, it just didn't seem satisfying to me in a way. After I'd seen it for the first time, I didn't really have any interest in watching it again. But let me tell you, the rewatchability factor comes from watching other people watch this movie for the first time. That's very enjoyable, and I would recommend. Plus, there are a lot of fun Easter eggs and references to the big twist of the movie that are sprinkled throughout it, including the wardrobe of Agent Barman and itself. They mirror each other. They're basically wearing the same thing. They're wearing the same colors. Yeah, that kind of fun stuff. I enjoy those. I have a feeling that the first action-packed 7 minutes of this movie were included possibly because they thought it might be too confusing, or maybe it was test audiences, I'm not super sure. But I have a feeling it was included because they were worried that the audience wouldn't get the whole time-traveling agent thing and would just be confused. But the first 7 minutes does the whole movie a disservice, and I think it would have been a lot stronger to just start it at the bar. Maybe, instead of just sharing his story, it could be like a tit-for-tat kind of thing, where Agent Barman is also sharing some stories of his own job. Then we could still see his face blow up. I think another reason for my dissatisfaction, or that kind of like ho-hum feeling I left with, is simply the nature of closed-loop time travel stories. So like there are a lot of different modes and theories of how time travel could and can work. You've got the butterfly effect, a la like Back to the Future, where you have free will and you can change the past, but your actions could have severe consequences on the future, including erasing yourself. And then you've got closed loop time travel, where the past can't be changed, and any attempt to go back in time to change it will actually just cause the past to be exactly how it is, how it's supposed to be. And free will is not really free will. There is no such thing as free will. Everything is predetermined. Predestination is a study in time loops. And it questions, like, who are we? Is free will even a thing? Or do we just go along life doing things exactly as they were supposed to happen? Some things are just inevitable. Or are they? Agent Barman seems to think so. Jane's existence is based on an infinite closed time loop that was created and is sustained by Jane. My problem with closed loop time travel is that it's usually pretty boring. You have to go through the same scenes multiple times with only the perspective changing, and with the knowledge that ultimately the scene itself isn't going to change. Closed loop time travel just usually, in my experience with the ones that I've seen, and maybe I just need to see different ones, but in my experience, closed loop time travel just isn't as fun to watch. Plus, the more you try to rationalize or think too hard about whether the existence of the characters and their motivations themselves makes sense within this paradox, the way less fun the experience becomes. And you might hurt your head. There are other things that Predestination explores, like who are we exactly? How do we identify with the previous versions of ourselves, the previous people that we have been? Do we have free will? So I put aside the methods and the theories and modes of time travel and the ramifications and the paradox. I put all that aside and I tried to really dig at the meaning behind this wacky story. What does it mean? And then it hit me. The message behind Predestination is, go fuck yourself. But don't get fucked by yourself. My name is Kyrie. This is Flights of Fantasy. And until next time, don't be afraid to just get real creepy, like just like overly affectionate. I think it'd be really funny if you did this and then something like boop.